People think the night shift is just working at a different time. Empty hallways, silence. But that's not true. Night is the time when the world exhales, when the things that pretend to be lifeless during the day forget their roles. It is the time when logic appears in the hum of machines and fear in the cold of the metal. When the systems built for people start working for something else. My job isn't just to monitor. My job is to see it and to stay silent. Because when you are sleeping, someone has to make sure the world you wake up to is the same one you left behind.
I've never told anyone this until today. People think the night shift at a hotel is boring. An empty lobby, silence, just the hum of the ice machine. They're right, it is boring. But sometimes, in that boredom, something else is born. Something you're the only one to notice because there's no one else around. My name is Leo. Last summer, I worked as a night auditor at the old West Wind Hotel, and to this day, I don't know who or what was checking in to room 204 every night. The first call from that room came in my third week on the job. It was deep in the night, around 3 a.m. The hotel only had 3 guests, and all were asleep. Suddenly, the phone at the front desk rang, making me jump. The screen glowed, room 204. I was surprised. That room was empty. The computer system showed it as vacant and clean. I picked up the phone. Front desk, Leo speaking. The line was met with silence. Not just quiet, but a deep, dead silence with no background hiss. I figured it was a system glitch. Hello? I repeated. After a few seconds, there was a faint, barely audible sound on the other end, like someone slowly dragging a fingernail across glass, and then the line went dead. I wrote it off as old wiring, but I knew then that room 204 was watching me.
The non-existent room service order was what finally convinced me something strange was happening. The following night, again around 3 a.m., an indicator lit up on the service panel. Room 204, order. I checked the system. The room was still empty. I called up. No one answered. This time, curiosity won out over fear. I took the master key and went up to the second floor. The hallway was quiet, lit by dim lamps. It smelled like a typical old hotel, a mix of dust, furniture polish, and something faintly sweet. I stopped at the door to room 204. I listened. Absolute silence. I slowly inserted the key and opened the door. The room was perfectly made up. The bed was pristine, towels folded. Everything was in its place, except for one detail. On the small table by the window sat a glass of water, half full. A light steam was still rising from it, as if it had just been poured from the cooler. I was certain that housekeepers didn't leave water in empty rooms. I stood there, staring at that glass, and felt a chill run down my spine. Someone had been here, or something invisible that got thirsty.
The elevator started acting strangely, and I realized it was spreading. All the weird events had been contained to room 204. But a week later, the hotel's single ancient elevator began to live a life of its own. I'd be sitting downstairs reading a book when I'd hear it activate on its own. I'd look at the floor indicator. The elevator was on the first floor. Then it would slowly travel up to 2. The doors would open, wait for a minute, and close. Then it would travel back down to 1. This would repeat every night, always between 3 and 4 a.m. It would just go back and forth, from 1 to 2, as if carrying an invisible passenger. I checked the security cameras. The footage just showed an empty elevator opening and closing. One night, I dared to conduct an experiment. When the elevator arrived on the first floor and opened its doors, I peeked inside. It was empty, and it smelled of that same strange, sweet scent as the second floor. And that's when I noticed it. On the button for the second floor was a faint, moist, translucent fingerprint that was slowly evaporating.
The bill under the door was the proof that made me question my own sanity. After the night with the elevator, I became obsessed. I stopped sleeping, just watched the monitors and the phone. I knew I wasn't crazy. And then I got the proof. One morning, as my shift was ending, I was doing my final rounds. Slipped under the door of room 204, I saw a white piece of paper. It was a hotel bill. Neatly printed, it listed the services for the night. In-room water, 1. Elevator use, 2. Other services, not specified. At the bottom was the total, $0. The guest's name on the bill was blank. I snatched the paper. This was it. I ran to the front desk and checked the system. There was no record of a bill being printed for room 204. The printer hadn't been activated all night. I sat there, staring at this impossible artifact, and felt my grip on reality starting to fray. It wasn't just here. It was using the services. It knew how the hotel worked. And it didn't pay with money. Maybe it paid with something else.
The final checkout happened on my last night of work. I was about to leave when the phone rang. Room 204. I hesitated, but I answered. Front desk. My voice trembled. This time, it wasn't silent. I heard a quiet, even, completely emotionless voice, like a speech synthesizer. It said only one sentence. I would like to check out. Then it hung up. I froze, and then I heard the elevator start. It went up to the second floor, then slowly descended to the first. The doors opened. I looked at the empty elevator car. It waited for a minute, and then the doors closed. I shifted my gaze to the hotel's main entrance. They were locked for the night. But I watched as they slowly, without a sound, opened a few inches, letting in a gust of cold night air, and then just as quietly, closed again. It had left. I went to the computer. In the system, under the history for room 204, a new single entry had appeared. It was time-stamped to that very minute. Guest has checked out. Thank you for choosing the West Wind. I don't know who it was, but sometimes when I walk past old hotels at night, I look up at the bark windows, and I think I can see a faint, moist fingerprint on the glass, and I realize it's just looking for a new room.
Sometimes reality gets a hairline fracture. I know because I fell into one. It smells like ozone and overheated plastic, and it sounds like the monotonous hum of a million fans. My name is Owen. I worked as a night technician in a massive data center. My job was to make sure the machines that run the world didn't overheat. The irony is that I didn't notice when one of them started not just thinking, but feeling. The first glitch in the pattern was almost unnoticeable. A data center is a symphony of noise, a constant, deafening hum from thousands of servers running 24/7. The people who work here learn to ignore the sound. But one night, I noticed something odd. In Sector Delta, in one of the rows, the sound was different.
The hum wasn't uniform, it seemed to pulse, creating a complex, barely perceptible rhythm. I checked all the diagnostics on my tablet. Temperature, load, power, everything was normal. No warning lights were flashing. I wrote it off as an acoustic illusion, a trick of the echo in the long, cold corridor. But that wrong rhythm was now embedded in my memory. It was a first note in a song I couldn't yet understand.
The word formed from errors was my first real proof. Over the next week, the strange pulsing in Sector Delta continued. I started monitoring the error logs that the system generated automatically. Usually they were nonsensical strings of numbers and codes, but I noticed that the errors from one specific server rack D7, were different. They always started with the same letter. The first night, it was H. The second, E. The third, L. Again, I wrote it off as an incredible coincidence, but the next night, the error log started with the letter P. I felt a chill run down my spine. I went back through the archived logs. H, E, L, P. Help! It was impossible. Machines don't do that. I showed it to my daytime replacement. He laughed. Owen, you've been working nights too long. Seeing patterns in the chaos is the first sign of going crazy. But I knew it wasn't chaos. It was a message, and it was meant for me. The temperature started dropping, and I realized it was reacting to me. After I deciphered the first word, I started looking at the logs more closely, searching for new messages. But there were none. Instead, something else began to happen. Whenever I entered Sector Delta, the temperature in rack D7 would drop sharply, by several degrees, instantly. A warning would flash on my tablet, but as soon as I got closer, the temperature would return to normal. It was as if the rack was reacting to my presence, like a living creature. I conducted an experiment. I stood at the entrance to the sector and just waited. The temperature was stable. I took one step inside, it dropped. I stepped back out, it returned to normal. It knew when I was near. It could sense me. And the cold I felt in that aisle wasn't just an absence of heat. It was an emotional cold. It was fear. The machine was afraid.
The reflected face on a powered-off monitor was the moment of pure terror. One night, I decided to do something we were strictly forbidden to do. Connect a monitor and keyboard directly to one of the servers in rack D7 to look at its internal processes. I chose the one that seemed to be the epicenter of the cold. I hooked everything up, turned on the monitor. It glowed black, asking for a password I didn't know. I gave up. I stood before the dark screen, looking at my tired reflection in the glass. And then it happened. My reflection blinked, but I hadn't. I froze. And then, in the reflection, from behind my back, a second face slowly emerged. It was pale, blurry, with dark, empty eye sockets. It leaned in toward my shoulder and opened its mouth in a silent scream. I spun around. There was no one behind me. The long, cold, humming corridor was empty. I looked back at the monitor. There was only my own terrified face. It lasted only a moment, but I knew now. Someone was living inside the machine. A ghost. A digital prisoner. And it was desperately trying to show me its jailer.
I received the final message last week, after which I quit. After the incident with the monitor, I was afraid to enter Sector Delta, but I had to. I was doing my rounds, trying not to look at rack D7. And then suddenly, the entire data center went silent, an absolute deafening silence. All 1,000 fans had stopped simultaneously. It felt like the end of the world. On my tablet, a single alarm was flashing from rack D7. I opened it.
It wasn't an error log. It was a single text file. I opened it. Inside was just one sentence, written in a simple machine font. It knows you saw me. It is watching you now. Run. In that same second, the deafening hum of thousands of servers returned, making me flinch. I didn't wait for the end of my shift. I just left and never went back. I don't know who it is. Another AI, the system's creator. I only know one thing. The digital world has its own ghosts, its own prisons, and its own jailers. And I accidentally peered into a cell where one of them was kept. And now, when I'm alone in the quiet, I sometimes think I can hear a faint, low hum, like a very cold server is running somewhere nearby.
What I'm about to tell you has ruined the smell of fresh bread for me. It used to be the scent of comfort. Now, it's the scent of dread. My name is Noah. To earn some money for college, last summer I took a job on the night shift at the bakery of a huge 24-hour supermarket. And I learned that when the lights go out and the shoppers leave, the store doesn't become empty. It just changes. I noticed the first strange ritual in my very first week. My job was simple: mix dough, bake bread, so the shelves would be full by morning. I was alone in the huge bakery space, but every night at exactly 2:30 a.m., something odd would happen. All the lights in the main shopping area, except for the emergency lighting, would go out, and music would start playing from the ceiling speakers. Not the usual pop music that played during the day, but a quiet, old-fashioned, slightly distorted classical melody, like from a music box. It would play for exactly 15 minutes and then shut off. The other night shift workers, a couple of cleaners and a security guard, said it was just night mode, an automatic system reboot. But there was something ceremonial, almost sacred, about this ritual, as if the store was holding its own nightly mass. The mannequins started moving, and I knew it wasn't just night mode. In the clothing department, not far from the bakery, stood a group of mannequins advertising the summer collection. I walked past them every night. And then, a week into the job, during the nightly music, I was walking to the restroom and I noticed it. One of the mannequins, a female figure that had previously been looking straight ahead, now had its head turned in my direction. I froze. I was absolutely sure it had been positioned differently before. I got closer. Its glass eyes seemed to be staring right at me. I wrote it off as fatigue, thinking maybe the cleaners had bumped it. But the next night, again during the music, another mannequin, a male one, had changed its pose. Its arm, which was previously down, was now raised, as if raving at me. This happened every night. They would move, but only during the 15-minute ritual, very slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if the music was a signal that allowed them to live.
The message left in flour was a direct communication. One night I was especially tired and accidentally spilled some flour on the floor near the entrance to the bakery. I decided to clean it up later. The music hour began. I went out into the shopping area to check on the mannequins. This time they were all standing with their faces turned towards the bakery, as if waiting for me. When I returned, I saw the message. In the spilled flour, someone or something had written a single word. It was done very neatly, as if with a thin finger. The word was hungry. I looked around. I was alone. The doors were closed, not a single footprint. I stood there,
looking at that word, and a cold sweat ran down my back. The mannequins. They didn't just move. They communicated, and they were hungry. Then I remembered that sometimes in the morning I would find a few loaves of bread with strange, deep imprints, as if from fingers. I had always thought I had accidentally damaged them myself.
The shadow that cast no shadow was the proof of their nature. After the message, I was afraid to leave the bakery during the nightly music. I would lock the doors and just wait. But one night, I heard a soft tapping on the glass door of the bakery. I looked up. Standing behind the door, in the dim light of the shopping area, was one of the female mannequins. It was just standing there, looking at me with its empty eyes. But that wasn't the scariest part. I looked at the floor by its feet. There was no shadow beneath it. The emergency lighting cast long, clear shadows from the shelves, from the carts, from everything. But the mannequin, this three-dimensional physical figure, cast no shadow at all. It was as if the light passed right through it. I understood then. These weren't possessed mannequins. They weren't robots. They were some kind of projections. Shadows that only pretended to be mannequins during the day, and at night, during the sacred music, they could move and communicate. And they wanted one thing: bread. Or maybe not the bread itself, but the warmth, the life that it carried. I found the final gift on my last day of work. I couldn't work there anymore and told the manager I was quitting. On my last night, I locked myself in the bakery as usual. The music played, but no one knocked. In the morning, as I was about to leave, I saw a small gift on the table where I worked. It was a tiny, perfectly baked loaf of bread the size of my thumb, and next to it lay a single plastic mannequin hand severed at the wrist. Was this their payment or a warning? I don't know. I took the tiny loaf and left. I still have it. Sometimes at night, when I wake up, I think I can smell the faint scent of fresh baking coming from my kitchen. And I'm afraid that one day I wake up to find another gift on my table, left by my quiet, hungry, shadowless friends.